So this is 11:12 GMT on Sunday, the 18th of September 2022. This is the second edition of this date of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, BabyAngelGeronimo editions. And we shall be talking about the ongoing issues, including updating on the situation in Pakistan, where Imran Khan is being featured in the repeat of his speech at Char Sadda rally or Jalsa held on Saturday, the 17th of September 2022. Imran Khan has been saying the same things or similar things or reciting the same list of things that he has been saying in almost all the Jalsas. And he's been still carrying the statement based on the theme Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah. Now, this is something that has been overdue for discussion, application, analysis for 75 years at least. So the fact that this is happening, even 75 years later, may not be good enough for what happened to Pakistan in the 75 years, or the purpose of Pakistan and the peoples who were supposed to be Pakistanis. Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah. Now, to what extent Imran Khan is going to stick to this as and when he moves to the next stage of the deals that he's proposing, the deal for the state in Pakistan to hold the free and fair elections. To what extent Imran Khan sticks to Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah remains to be seen. But one thing that doesn't need to be waited for is the fact that this is out in the open. Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah. Now, this is the essence of the struggle for Pakistan. What was the struggle for? Yes, it's La ilaha illallah, but what in terms of political reality did La ilaha illallah mean? And to what extent did the East Pakistanis lead in the implementation of the purpose of Pakistan in the 23 years from 1947, August 1947 to 16th of December 1971. 1971, 16th of December was the date when the Indian intervention caused the Pakistan Eastern Command commander, Lieutenant General Amir Abdullah Niazi, to surrender, for which act Niazi has been condemned by the rest of the Pakistan military later. We began asking the question about 2 years ago about the context of Pakistan, context of India, context of Bangladesh, context as defined by the events of August 1947. Today is the day before the funeral of Brenda, the England Queen. Brenda is, of course, the name of the Queen Elizabeth. Brenda is a name that has been used by the so-called satirical magazine Private Eye. Brenda for her, and Brian for Charles, who is now the King, Charles III. Brian and Brenda. So tomorrow, Monday, is declared a bank holiday in honor of Brenda because her funeral takes place tomorrow. And it is something that cannot be actually described. It has to be seen. The entirety of the metropolitan or the greater London is taken over by people moving towards the line, the queue, that goes on for miles to facilitate the physical witnessing, checking, or sighting of the Brenda's coffin. In the south of the River Thames is the borough of Southwark, which is where the queue starts. And it goes on up to the Palace of Westminster, and it is for miles and it is for hours. And the spectacle is that the people are behaving as if Brenda was a deity, as if she was a goddess. Of course, she was no goddess, but they're behaving as if she was a goddess. And I, of course, cannot recall any situation where a pope or a archbishop or head of the Anglican Church or the Roman Catholic Church kind of was shown this kind of somber so-called respect, because the absolute overwhelming majority of these people, with a few exceptions, they're all white people, of course. There are some people of African origins and a smaller proportion Asian background on the queues. But the overwhelming majority of the people are white people, European ethnicity and backgrounds. So they were there, but these people have been in the queues in various forms for the last more than a week. And Brenda is being shown the reverence that is not found in reality anywhere. And the mythology that Fleet Street and the BBC and the mainstream media are perpetrating and parading and perpetuating is the mythology based on the absolutely untruthful assertion that she was a symbol of unity among nations and among communities, that she symbolized peace and stability and all the rest of it. All of this is fiction. All of this is myths. All of this is such an audacious collection of lies that these could be paraded only if the paraders and the engineers and operatives of the banner and the slogan had total confidence in the fact that the targeted people, the millions lining up, the queuing up, would indeed accept without any reservation the propaganda line that Brenda symbolized peace and respect. Now, any casual, random reference to events of the last 70 years, 7 decades, 70 years, during which Brenda is said to have reigned, longest reigning monarch, British monarch. Any random reference, any random fact checking of events of the last 70 years cannot conceal the fact that Brenda had no role in stopping wars and bringing together people. Let's say the ones that the United Kingdom as a state has been emboldened. In September, this is September, in September 2001, there was a staged series of events in New York, USA, staged in concert with the Crusader narrative that Muslims were bad for the West, essentially bad for the whole of the humanity. And by using or abusing the aggravation of that particular propaganda, the operatives of the so-called 9/11 arrived in the kind of public arena by saying that Muslims have done it. And on that falsehood, then USA President George W. Bush and the then UK Prime Minister Tony Blair foisted a genocidal series of attacks on the people of Afghanistan and the people of Iraq. That foisted anti-Muslim series of violence and genocidal attacks continued until last year, in August 2021. The current USA President, Joe Biden, declared that the American troops would be withdrawn from Afghanistan and there would be an exit from Afghanistan. And it followed that the UK followed the American lead. There was no explanation for the failures that the Afghanistan adventure and the Iraq adventure represent American failures, British failures. And the failures are openly marked by racism, racist discrimination. In the so called exit and the rescue of the people from out of Afghanistan, non white members of the occupation settlements were left behind. And Brenda had nothing to do with saving the people from being racistly discriminated against. And Brenda has had no role whatsoever in stopping the genocidist attacks, either at the beginning or throughout the decades that followed the September invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq. In fact, Brenda's son, Brian, who is now King Charles III, has been brazenly exposed as being involved in dodgy finance and dodgy receipt of finance under dodgy claims. And Brenda has not stopped that, nor has she apologized. Brenda's son Andrew paid millions to settle the particular claim of rape, trafficking, etc., made against him by several women. And throughout the whole period of the years since Andrew became embroiled in the allegations that concerned his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, the main perpetrator, who is thought to have been murdered in jail in the USA in order to save vested interest, powerful partners with him in the sexual trafficking and rape of young girls. Brenda not only did not apologize for her rapist's criminal son, she repeatedly shielded him and repeatedly offered money to cover his various costs, etc., etc., etc. So these are not things of fantasy, these are realities, day to day events that took place in the last few years. And Brenda kept giving pretexts and excuses, or finding pretexts and excuses, to give Andrew, not Brian Epstein, but Andrew, her second son, all kinds of protection that the monarch, the reigning monarch, could provide. And Brenda's failures to apologize for the rapist's son, Andrew, who is widely reported as having been her favorite son, is a brazen denial of basic duty of decency and common sense and whatever, not to speak of higher moral duties as she has owed and has failed to discharge. So how on earth can such a record be overlooked and forgotten, and Brenda being painted as a saint, which is what she is being painted as. All these people lining up, the ones that have been shown on the videos or the footage broadcast over the last week, these people have said, apparently spontaneously, that they are quite happy to be spending as long as they have been spending and putting up with the various physical hardship that these long waits and other things that they've been having to do to be able to see her body or her coffin. And there is a kind of list as long as the events of 70 years in the world where Brenda has not stopped any wars, Brenda has not stopped any persecution of people, genocides, whatever. And it is astonishing that the same Brenda is being treated in the way that she is being treated. And tomorrow, of course, Monday, the 19th of September, is the day that she is formally buried. And all the major events, political events, so called, in the United Kingdom in the last 70 years, have happened with the consequences that they have created and caused, without Brenda being seen anywhere near being active in stopping injustice at home. Brenda's treatment of Meghan Markle and her treatment of Harry, because of Harry being married to Meghan Markle, is the second biggest internal scandal in her family after the murder in the staged car crash that Diana actually was the victim of. Because when Diana was murdered, she was murdered after she publicly expressed concern about her safety. And the clear words that she actually wrote have now been published. That she wrote that she would be killed in a staged car crash, which is exactly what happened. And the year that Diana was murdered was described by Brenda in the year following as her annus horribilis, horrible year. Now, annus horribilis was a confession about her public relations activities that were exposed as being shabby and shallow. Not a confession about Diana's murder, or not a confession about any basic humanitarian sympathies for the victim of the murder. So the people who are lining up now and have been lining up for the last week, and they will be doing so with excessive excitement, emotional excitement, tomorrow, that is Monday, the 19th of September 2020. Apart from the people queuing up across London, life in the city of London, that is the metropolitan city of London, has ceased to work. It's been complete standstill. Brenda is the one as the monarch who has had to give this final stamp to all the bills in Parliament that became acts of Parliament and then had to be kind of authorized or kind of approved by her before they became what is called the part of the statute book that became law. All the laws against civil liberties, right to protest, for and all the bad reactionary legislation over the last 70 years have been so-called passed with Brenda's collusion, complicity. There is no evidence, there has been no evidence publicly accessible at present and so far anyway of any real change made to any of the legislation, because the campaigners concerned, no denial of justice has been prevented by Brenda intervening. So, what the so called British Parliament has passed in a near fascistic way and a near fascistic program has been done with the collusion, complete collusion and complicity by Brenda herself. So, what on earth are these people doing, claiming personal grief at our passing? How can that be? Personal grief could only be possible for anyone to experience if they were personally related to the person that has passed away. Brenda has had little parts to play in facilitating Brexit, as well as will be admitted later, I predict, in sabotaging the Scots' bid for independence. Because the fact that she officially was at Balmoral when she died cannot be more inconvenient for the Scottish National Party. So, in a detailed kind of review, I shall be examining the various stages, and I shall show that Brenda has been taking part in sabotaging the Scottish independence bid. And Brenda has not, of course, apologized to the Scottish or Scotland based victims of Scottish white racism. Because all the people that have been insulted in Scotland by Scotland's racists have been under her monarchy, haven't they? And there is no record, there is no evidence whatsoever that is public or has been publicly accessible so far as I speak on this day, the day before her funeral, that Brenda has been party to the Little England kind of empire. I think that there will be admissions, more detailed admissions that have been kind of gleaned from various hints that Brenda played a very elaborate part in making sure that Brexit did happen. Because Brexit did happen, at the minor kind of hints attributed to the palace that were interpreted and then exaggerated to show that Brenda wanted Britain to be out of the European Union. And for a zombie, vulnerable, gullible Little England mass, such little hints proved more than enough basis for supporting the Brexit adventure on the part of Brenda. And Brenda did support Brexit. And Brenda did communicate candid, one incident that became public because of the stupid, callous lack of care on a personal level by then Prime Minister David Cameron. was contained in Cameron bragging to someone that Brenda was so pleased with that particular whatever item that she was discussing over the phone with then Prime Minister Cohen. Cameron said, as he laughed in boasting to his whoever he was confiding in, that Brenda was purring. He actually used the term of purring, that is like felines purr with excitement and happiness and pleasure. Well, the theory is that as a monarch, Brenda was beyond such behavior. But the fact that Cameron found it too much to conceal shows that Brenda was happy to let Cameron have the benefit of her backing for whatever it was that was involved in that particular series of conversations about the particular state of. So we shall be looking more at Brenda's behavior. Strictly speaking, on the evidence, not because we want to deny her due recognition for any factually justifiable, factually sustainable, credible work that she did about the promotion of peace and the promotion of equality and diversity and all the rest of it. Suffice to say that we don't accept there exists any evidence that Brenda wanted to end racism in the family. The brutal way that her grandson Harry was pushed out of the United Kingdom, the brutality of the execution of the exit of Harry and Meghan proves that Brenda was not only that she was quite adamant that Harry and Meghan left the circle of the royalty. How unthinkable is it that our own grandson, who has been featured in the footage shown in the last 24 hours, Harry and Meghan were evicted from the royal family because Brenda agreed with Brian and Williams that Harry didn't fit the profile of the royal family as the husband. Harry and Meghan have made repeated attempts for reconciliation, a return to the royal family, but Brenda has blocked. Whether she has blocked them because Charles and William wanted Harry and Meghan to be blocked. It doesn't matter because it was the monarch, Brenda, who could have unblocked the barriers that have been erected against Harry and Meghan. So the newspapers and the media, the mainstream media, and the so-called commentators in the UK are lying. Where is the scholarship? Where is the ethics? Where is the standard of morality and probity and democracy and accountability and transparency and all the other so-called values? None of those values exist. And it's a state where idiocy and stupidity and racism are being celebrated as being among the hallmarks of the character of the monarch, longest serving monarch. What did she serve? We shall, of course, continue with this as things move in terms of various chronological events happening around her funeral. So, what the Financial Times FT weekend talked about is the future of the monarchy. And it was hinted at the monarchy being less secure than it has been so far. Well, that is putting it mildly. Because despite the fact that by definition, the Labour Party's values, founding values, were Republican in terms of being against monarchy, the Labour Party has made no difference. Whether in power or out of power, as a party, as the second biggest party in the context of the parliament, the Labour Party has failed to come across with a statement about the model society, or the model government, or model head of state rather than a monarch. Because all the evidence so far show that the Labour Party, when given the chance, the opportunity to talk about the big officers of the state, the Labour Party has proven to be as corrupt, as anti-democratic, as pro-fascist as its nearest kind of predecessor, as the second biggest party, had been like or doing. Is the Liberals that took the place the Labour Party has not done anything to undermine the corrupt institution of the monarchy. And with the kind of so-called frontman leader that Keir Starmer is, the Labour Party is not going to be making any difference to the future of the monarchy. And it will not make any difference to replace the monarchy with any accountable, democratic kind of purpose. The FT lunch with the Turkish recipient of the Nobel Prize no debate has been initiated by the Labour Party under any of its leaders in Parliament that has actually shown any difference in terms of the approach it has had to the constitution of the future without a monarchy. And despite the fact that Gordon Brown has operated a personal propaganda line to the effect that Gordon Brown is very intelligent, assuming that that is the case, we say it's irrelevant. There is no evidence whatsoever that either at the end of the so-called Queen's speech or at the beginning of the speech or whatever, the Labour Party has played any part in scrapping the corruption that dominates the whole of the monarchy and its role. And there is nothing that can be found in any of the statements that Starmer has made or any of the other frontbench personnel have made about the monarchy that makes any worthwhile comment about the future of the constitution. During the various code challenges, so-called, against the Brexiteers, abusing the monarchy and abusing the constitution, the Labour Party was absent. It was a non-Labour Party person who was the front person in the challenge against the anti-democratic, corrupt Brexiteering activities. And at no stage did sources close to Buckingham Palace or something ever share any reservation against Brexit or any reservation against any of the Brexiteers because of their dishonesty, their corruption, and their criminality. So we'll stop this particular edition this time, but we shall continue later, and we shall cover the other parts, other issues and topics that remain to be followed up. This is 50 minutes, just over 50 minutes long. And we're stopping this at 2 minutes past midday GMT on Sunday, the 18th of September 2022.